Hi, my name is Anjana Gopakumar. I am a food writer and a blogger from the land of peppercorns, I would like to call it, from Kerala. I hail from Thiruvananthapuram, the capital city of Kerala. And thank you so much, Anubhav, for inviting me to have this conversation about Kerala cuisine. To talk about the cuisine of my land is such a gifted opportunity. So, thank you so much. So I'll just begin anyways. I think we'll just start the discussion about how what is Kerala cuisine all about and how Kerala cuisine is so much more vibrant and so much more deeper in information than what we all know generally, right? So, according to me, from the research I've been doing about the cuisine of my land or whatever I little I've known, and there's so much more for me to explore. I think that in this slender area of Kerala, there is the food, the cuisine caters to all kinds of people, all kinds of communities and all kinds of food, people of different kinds of food habits, like vegans, for example, or vegetarians, or eggetarians, or non-vegetarians, or hardcore non-vegetarians, be it anybody. Um, the Kerala cuisine contributes or accommodates all these kinds of people. When I talk about veganism, the use of coconut milk and the reduced amount use of ghee, right? We use more of coconut oil for our cooking, which makes it completely vegan. For vegetarians, of course, we have an elaborate sadhya in store, and most of the dishes in sadhya are vegan. And vegetarians, why I say we accommodate vegetarians as well, is because like how Parsis use a lot of eggs in their cuisine, Kerala cuisine also makes use of eggs in a very creative and unique way. For example, if I have to tell you egg roast and motta roast, which we call it mutta roaster. Egg masala, we all know we have it with appam or we have it with idiyappam, adipatiri or anything. But then there is this very unique dish called Mutta Mala. Mutta, which translates to egg, and Mala, which translates to necklace. So, Mutta Mala, and it's also called Pinyanattapam. Yeah, that's the difficult part. We cannot pronounce Pinyanattapam, but then Mutta Mala is the easier way to say it, I guess. So, Muttamala is made by separating egg yolks and egg whites. So, you first basically separate egg yolks and egg whites. Egg yolk is then strained, and then we make a chashni, a sugar syrup, a clear chashni, and through a strainer we pour these egg yolks into the boiling sugar syrup, which forms a necklace like sweet just out of egg yolks, and the egg whites are whisked together until it forms peaks, like it's foamed up. Then we grease up a tray and then we steam the egg whites. These egg whites are then cut into square pieces like these appam bites, and then we put the egg yolk strings which we made on top of the egg whites, and we have it like a sweet dish. It's very popular during iftar. It's made by the Malabar. It's a very popular dish at the Malabar region. It's made by the Mopla community in Kerala. So there are some creative, unique ways in which eggs are used in Kerala cuisine. That's why I say all kinds of food habits, or people from different food habits, like if they're vegans or vegetarians or non-vegetarians or vegetarians in particular, all of them have something or the other to taste in Kerala. So when we talk about how Kerala cuisine was popular earlier, Kerala cuisine was generally known for appam and ishtu or appam. Ishtu is basically, I think it's a Portuguese influence because Kerala has had Portuguese people, Dutch people, Jewish community come and settle here, and the exchange of food has happened. So, like a stew or cooking stew, basically with the meat stewed in a gravy, right, which is thickened using corn flour, which got converted or replaced with thick and thin coconut milk in Kerala. So, but once Kerala cuisine was very popular for what do you call it, appam and ishtu. Now, thanks to social media and people boasting about porota or non-vegetarian or meat cuisines and Karimin Polichadu so much, Kerala is now known for Karimin Polichadu and porota. And when we talk about porota, I think I recently had a conversation with Taranum, who has also done a talk in on Delhi Food Works, that it's not Malabar paratha. it is always Malabar porota. So it is always porota and not paratha. So paratha is basically something which is very homemade and very comforting, which your mom makes. We don't have that concept in Kerala, but we have something called porota, which is not made with whole wheat, but made with refined flour, maida, milk, eggs, and sometimes, like a very small trick, these restaurateurs use these small bananas also to make it very soft and flaky. It uses a lot of oil as well to cook it and make it very flaky, and it's a kind of an art also in the process of making paratha, that is. That is porota. I'm sorry, not paratha, but porota, right? So I think this whole process of highlighting Kerala cuisine as just Malabar porota and hardcore non-veg, like though we take pride in serving very different kinds of non-vegetarian dishes in Kerala, but then there is also the vegetarian community, or there's also a lot of veg food which we have in Kerala, which is, I think, because it's not very much highlighted in our land, right, as of now. In Kerala, if we look at it from the top most to the bottom area, if we look at the top, we always have the Malabar influence. The central Kerala is usually the Syrian Christian or the Suryani kitchen, which we call it, the Suryani influence. And the bottom part, the southern bit of Kerala, has a lot of Tamil influence if we look closely into it. So in Kerala, Palakkad and Thiruvananthapuram, where I hail from, both have a lot of Tamil influence because these two were parts of Tamil Nadu at one point. And then, so the Palakkad has a lot of rice cultivation also, which you see a lot in Tamil Nadu as well. So we have a lot of Tamil influence, Malabar influence, and Christian cuisine. So it's a Hindu, Muslim, Christian influence all together in the cuisine that we see in our land. So if you look at Malabar influence, a lot of Arab traders had come to Kerala for spices, right, for trading of spices, and that's how they got settled, and eventually their cuisine got influenced. So we have something called Alisa, which is a very popular derivative of harissa, which is a there is an Indian variant in Hyderabad called Halim. So Alisa has adapted to Kerala cuisine by the use of shallots, which is given to Kerala by Jews, of course. So you see a lot of Malabar influence at the topmost area, and then you see the Syrian Christian influence in the middle of Kerala, like Kottayam. If you come, you have a lot of appam, or you have kallappam. So appam, though we all know, appam is quite popular. We all know about appam. We all know that it's very popular in Kerala. The sides are crisp, the middle part is dense. But the actual Kerala appam is, according to me at least, is kallappam. Kalla, which is toddy, and kalla, which is toddy, and appam is basically the bread. So you use fermented rice batter with coconut milk for making appam. But then when you make kallappam, the rice is fermented using toddy, right? So toddy even goes into the normal cuisine. It's not just drank, or like you don't just drink it and get high. But then the fresh toddy is used to make kallappam as well. And kallappam goes really well with the mutta roast, which we were talking about, the egg roast, which we were talking about initially. And I personally think, even though these different cuisines and different influences have happened in Kerala, there is a lot of Ayurvedic principles being followed in Kerala cuisine. Ayurvedic principles, as in, if you look, there's an Ayurvedic principle called Ushnam Ushnena Shanti, that is, heat cures heat, right? So if you visit Kerala, it's a moderately humid climate here. It's always either hot or rain, right? It's either this or that. There's no winter in Kerala. So even when you come to Kerala during summers, you get served hot water. You're just craving for cold water, but then every restaurant or every household, there's either boiled hot water, which is warm, and then served to you. And then you get confused, like, why? I don't want hot water. But according to Ayurveda, a hot body is not supposed to consume cold water. So we intake hot water, but infused with different things, right? We have Jeeraga Vellam, which is cumin water, which is said to, it's like an appetizer, to be honest. If you drink Jeeraga Vellam or cumin water before your food or before your meal, it induces hunger and also cools down your body. And I think we are also known for the pink water which we get in Kerala. Like, what is it? People just get confused. Why is the water pink in color? When you go to a restaurant, they serve you a glass of water which is like lightly purple or lightly pink, and people go crazy like, why is this water colored? Like, shouldn't you be giving me clean, clear water? So the pink water is basically patimukham or karingali, which are like Ayurvedic elements, and it's Indian redwood's bark, to be honest. So it's a bread which is infused into hot water, which reduces cholesterol. So I think it's very important because in Kerala cuisine we consume a lot of meat, we eat a lot, right? Even if there's a lot of carbs also, like we eat kappa, which is tapioca, and there's a lot of rice consumption and cholesterol and sugar. So it kind of cuts down cholesterol. That's what it is said. Patimukham or Karingali, that's the Indian redwood bark. You can get it on Amazon also now. You get those pink water sachets. Also, there's another variant called Ramacham, which kind of helps you in sorting out menstrual cramps. So they say when you have a menstrual cramp, you drink water infused with Ramacham. It kind of calms you down. Also, it reduces body odor because it's a very humid area and we all sweat a lot. I think all these little principles that go into Kerala cuisine is very very what do you call it? Very interesting facts to look into. Even with so many influences, which Ayurvedam still exists to be a part and parcel of our life in Kerala. And this one question I get often is, how would you eat on a banana leaf? Or how comfortable are you eating on a banana leaf? And people get actually excited when they come to Kerala. My friends and all keep saying, I want to eat on a banana leaf, right? In Kerala, we eat on a banana leaf, even parcel food in a banana leaf. Like we even have creative ways to hold curry in a banana leaf. So what we do is we first take never try to parcel food or try to wrap up food in a fresh green banana leaf. Always put it above heat so that it becomes flexible, so it becomes a little darker in shade. Then you can fold it. So you put rice inside it, you put curry inside it. It's easy to fold and wrap when you parcel it on a banana leaf, right? And then how you eat it, people get confused. Like, wouldn't it tear open? So make sure you have shorter nails. Always helps. And then once there are certain norms which we follow when we eat on a banana leaf. It is just understood. We've been we've been cultured with it so that we just go with the flow, right? uh, we never serve rice on an empty banana leaf. So apparently, it's a myth that usually we first serve all the curries on the other side, and then is when the rice is served. And people get confused. Khane ke baad, like after we finish eating, to which side do we fold the banana leaf? That is one question that I've heard a lot of people ask me. Do we fold it against us or do we fold it towards us? It's very simple. It's not as simple, but in Tamil cuisine, which borders Kerala, like I told you, there's a lot of Tamil influence in Kerala cuisine. So in Tamil cuisine, it's as per the occasion. So if we are at a marriage or if it's a happy occasion, if a joyous occasion, we fold the banana leaf towards us, which says, "I am happy. May this come again." When it is a sad or we are mourning, or if it is not something you wish for again, you fold it against you, thinking, may this not happen again, right? May such a thing, or may this sadness not be there in our life again. We just fold it against us. In Kerala, we also signify how important it is, the meal. If we enjoyed it or not, it's like a communication. Folding the banana leaf is also like a way of communicating if we liked it or not. So if we are folding it towards us, I'm happy, I'm content about the meal, right? I want more of the meal. Again, next time I might come and choose the same caterers again. If I'm folding it against me, it says I was okay. The food was not that great. It can be better. There's scope for improvement. Like a constructive criticism, you leave there, just there by folding a leaf and you walk off. So nobody gives an eye to you. They don't feed you bad food. So after the meal, you're just letting them know that there is a scope for improvement. So there are these little things which even as Malayalis we still do not know why we do it. We just fold it some way or the other and we get up. But then it is all an art, right? It is the art of breaking down how to eat on a banana leaf. So all these little things, also from an Ayurvedic principle of eating on a banana leaf would be that it has a lot of antioxidants. Banana leaf provides a lot of antioxidants. I watched the live where chef had spoken about Malabar cuisine, and she spoke about how plantain is used in um, a lot of dishes in Kerala, like the Malabar cuisine, or if you come to South, we have very famous Vazhakkappam or Palampuri, which is the name changes as we go from north to south. So this is also made with banana. So I think we use all parts of a plantain, like the leaf. We have something called Varatada, which is the stem of the plantain, which we make toran out of. Toran, which is basically Varatada, which is the banana stem cut into small cubes, and we then saute it in a spiced coconut mixture. So we use that. We use ripe bananas. We use raw bananas. So I think almost all parts of the banana flour we use it to make toran. So coming to what toran is all about. Toran is like we take a vegetable. We even have non-veg torans. So we have chicken toran, we have fish toran. Toran is basically any core ingredient, the main ingredient, sauteed and cooked with the spicy coconut mixture. So the use of coconut is very prominent, right, in Kerala cuisine. You say we find it everywhere. To be honest, it is very true. We use coconut in almost everything, and we are not ashamed of it. Like coconut oil is like a powerhouse for us. So we use coconut in everything, and toran is one dish. I think it is found across Kerala. It's just called differently. Somewhere it's called upperi. Here we call it, to the south we call it toran. It's basically any ingredient we take and we add coconut to it, and with a little bit of cumin seed, garlic, probably a few spices. Usually it is not heavily done with turmeric or chili powder or coriander powder. It's usually either just ginger, garlic, um, and all that. Yes, someone has asked me to speak about pattiri as well, for sure. So pattiri is basically, it's also called aripatiri. Aripatiri is usually a Malabar. It's a Malabar dish. It is from the northern part of Kerala. Yeah, and aripatiri is basically made with rice flour and roasted rice flour, right? So rice flour with water and salt, we make a thick dough, like a not a very soft dough, and then we roll it out and then we cook it on the grill. So aripatiri is usually it's a bread. It's a very classic bread served at the Malabar household. But when you come down to the south of Kerala, you don't have a lot of patiri. Patiri you see, it's also called nice patiri. Nice. Yeah, nice patiri because of how thin it is. It is very thin and very soft. And usually how they have it is with meat. If they have it with meat, they soak it with coconut milk. So aripatiri, patiri, we pour coconut milk on top of it, and then we wait for 2 seconds for the aripatiri to soak in the coconut milk, and then we add the meat dish or curry on top of it, and then the coconut milk kind of dilutes the spiciness of the curry a little bit, and the patri also soaks up all the goodness of the gravy, and we have it together. So that is about, can we make patri and chicken with chicken stuffing? Or there is also something called Chattipati. Chatti is basically the vessel. Chattipatri has layers. So basically, it's not stuffed, it is layered with chicken. So we put a layer of patri, we put a layer of chicken, but that has a different composition. The recipe is a little different, the procedure is a little different. Not exactly aripatri. There are different types of patri. Aripatri, nice patri. There's also oratti. Oratti is also a kind of bread, which what do you call it? It's a bit much thicker and it's fat. It's handmade. Like it's not flattened with a rolling pin. It's shaped with your hand. So bringing us to the use of coconut once again. The use of coconut is very prominent in Kerala, that we use coconut milk. So we have different kinds. We use different kinds of coconut milk: thin coconut milk, thick coconut milk, as per the use. So first we put in thin coconut milk, then we top it off with thick coconut milk, right? The use of coconut is very prominent also because it is easily available. And I've read multiple articles which kind of debates on the topic if coconut oil is much more healthier than olive oil or not. It is, some say yes, some say no. I'm not sure. I think as long as one sticks to their own cuisine and kind of works across that, it's all good. So you can never say it, like maybe scientifically you can prove that coconut oil or mustard oil is much better, or in terms of health, it is much better than olive oil. But then, if you tell an Italian that olive oil is not good, he's going to get offended. He or she's going to get offended. If you come and tell a Bengali that soka tail is not good, like the mustard oil is not good, they get offended. Like that. Similarly, a Malayali might get offended if you come and tell us that coconut oil, the smell of it, I cannot stand. But then it's all about accepting who we are, and just like Indian cuisine how it was never there. It has always been acceptance in being inclusive about how the migrants came about, and how we kind of used their resources, made sure we accepted their bit of knowledge and grew. Exactly like that, I think Kerala cuisine is very similar along those lines. We have also had migrants, and we have also had expats come and settle in Kerala, and we have developed along. And that's exactly how I divided it, right? In the top, like on the top, we have Malabar influence, like the Arab influence, which you can see in a lot of. There's something, a dish called aad chuttad, which is aad is goat, chuttad means roasted on an open fire. So that is also a very big influence from the Arab cuisine, Arabic people. So whatever we had in Kerala, they used our spices and kind of recreated the dish now, which we have accepted as our own. And if you come to the center, like I said, Syrian Christian cuisine, which a lot of cookbooks are available as Suryani cooking from Kerala. They use a lot of, they have a stewing technique, which is also very European influence, right? It is not a very Western influence and use very minimum, easy cooking technique also. And instead of corn flour, like I said, they use coconut milk to thicken the gravy. That's how duck mappas or fish moli, for instance. Fish moli is very popular, served with appam. Fish moli is also cooked. Fish moli has no other spices. The color is from turmeric. The sourness is from the tomatoes added. The spiciness is from the chili. That's it. That's pretty much it. And then the flavor of fish. And then it's topped with a little bit of coconut oil. I think that is necessary for all of us. So, like I said, then coming to Tamil influence, right? When we come to the south, there's a lot of Tamil influence which people do not know about. So when we talk about Kerala, generally from a larger perspective, when we look from outside, it is all Malabari, or we get called Malabari a lot. Um, uh, but then it's much more, it's much deeper. And Tamil influence we can see a lot, like I told you, in Palakkad and Tirunelveli. In Tirunelveli, there's a lot of Tamil Brahmin settlement. So they brought along their cuisine, and that's how probably sambar, idli, dosha, and all got very popular. Because if you look at Kerala breakfast dishes, it is not sambar or idli, but it is puttu and appam, which is widely consumed at our households. It's idiyappam, puttu, appam, and not really sambar and idli. So, and rasam, like someone had commented about rasam. Yes, rasam is also a very, even though it is part of Kerala Sadhya, and it is usually served after. Sadhya also across districts, it changes in the way it is served, and usually after the payasam. Payasam, which is a sweet, is served in between a sadhya, and after the payasam is when the rasam is served. Rasam also is majorly a Tamil influence to Kerala cuisine. Like even Avial. Avial has a link to Mahabharata. It is said that Bhima was the one who created or invented the dish called Avial, which is the mythological belief. And Avial also, there is a Tamil Sangam literature which has another story about Avial and how Avial was actually invented in Tamil Nadu. But then Avial is kind of popular for Kerala. And even dishes like rasam is very widely popular for Kerala. I never knew that people actually thought that rasam was from Kerala, but then it's a half and half, right? It's a Tamil influence also. When you think about Kerala, when if you can think of idli and sambar, I don't know how it became so popular as a synonym for Kerala cuisine. But then as a breakfast, if you go to any household or if you go to any restaurant in the south of Kerala, you usually get fed with appam or puttu and idiyappam. If you go to the north, you get aripatiri and all those unique Malabar dishes as well. Is payasam the only dessert of Kerala? Oh no, very very valid question. Not at all. Payasam is made because there was cow's milk available and rice was a major staple. So payasam is a very famous dessert of Kerala. But then, like I told you, Syrian Christians have also made a lot of desserts like elamir, desserts with tender coconut, and then like I told you, the dessert which is made with only eggs and sugar, which is the muttamala, which are not quite popular outside of the Malabar region, but they are also desserts. It's just egg and sugar and made with egg whites and egg yolks. So there are multiple desserts made with in Kerala as well, not just payasam. Payasam is coconut milk or milk, but usually coconut milk again. So when we make a pradhaman, which is also a variant of payasam, which is made with jaggery, Anything which is a dark brown in color is also a payasam. Unlike the kheer which we get, which is white or creamy in color, we also have these brown payasam which are called the pradhaman. Mm, pradhaman which is made with coconut milk and jaggery which is reduced, and then we make it with different kind. There's something called ada which uses rice flour. Then we make these thin sheets and then we boil it in water, and then we cook it in the reduced jaggery and coconut milk syrup. So no, payasam is not just the only dessert of Kerala. We have other desserts as well. It is also very separated. Like we have a variant of Venpongal in Tirunelveli. Venpongal is a very Tamil, um, uh, sorry, Sharkare Pongal, not Venpongal, Chakkare Pongal, which is Jaggery Pongal, which is from Tamil Nadu during the Pongal festival they make it. We have a variant of that in Kerala as well. Puttu is great to eat a wholesome meal, I think. Very true. So it is steamed. Most of the breakfast dishes are steamed, I guess. So idiyappam is steamed. Idiyappam is also a very big influence from Sri Lanka. Um, Everything is an exchange here. It's all come from idli is considered a very healthy food. Can you put more light on this? For sure, idli. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Idli is steamed. It is rice flour. It's okay to eat carbs in the morning. You digest it through your processor working every day. But then idli was there is a variant of idli in Palakkad in Kerala called Ramasheri idli. Um, so Ramasheri idli is also an influence from. It's a very typical or a very specific kind of idli which you get in Palakkad, which is not available anywhere else in Kerala. So if there is a pot inside which earthen pot, which inside which water is boiled, and there's a muslin cloth which is put on top of the pot's head, right, on the neck, and then it's tied up, and then the steam comes and hits the muslin cloth. You take the batter, and then you put it like a small dosa. You spread it like a small dosa, and then the steam from the water kind of cooks the idli. It's a ramasheri. It's a typical, very unique kind of idli, which is very soft, almost like the tatte idli you get at Karnataka. So idli is basically full carbs. It's just carbs. You can make variants of idli more healthy by adding curry leaves. You put curry leaves into the batter, it becomes curry leaf idli. If you want to add coriander paste to idli, you can make it more tasty and add more flavors to it. But then, usually when we are sick and all, in my part of Kerala, we add curry leaf because curry leaf is said to build immunity and also it is good for hair. That's what they say. Curry leaves are good for hair growth. So they add curry leaves sneakily to idli. People who do not like curry leaves also they just eat it. They incorporate it to chutneys. Yeah, like talking about coconut again. For biryani, we serve chutney, a chammandi. For usually we either serve salan or a pickle or raita, which is heavily consumed. But in Kerala, for Talasheri biryani, which is the most popular kind of biryani from Kerala, we serve a chammandi which is made of coconut. So it's coconut and we add a little bit of mint. We add some tamarind for a little bit of tart, like the bitter flavor, and then we just whisk it up with chili. It's spicy, and that is what is served with biryani. It's a very weird combination to think about, but it's super delicious because Talasheri biryani in itself is very mild. It's very mild. It's very less masala. So the chammandi kind of accentuates the flavor of the biryani. So I think when I'm coming to because I'm coming to the 30-minute mark, I just want to say that Kerala cuisine is highlighted very poorly when it comes to social media. It's highlighted to be only non-vegetarian cuisine or it's highlighted to be only unhealthy food. But then there is this array of healthy vegetarian, vegan, vegetarian options that is available in the cuisine of my land. Even though we use a lot of coconut, there are flavors that can blow your mind, right? Even everything contains coconut, you might think that everything might have the same kind of flavor profile, everything might just taste creamy. But no, something as like in Indian cuisine, we have something as simple as a khichdi to something as complicated as a nihari. Like that, even Kerala cuisine has the something as simple as an olen. Olen is a vegan dish made out of coconut milk, thin coconut milk, boiled with ash gourd and uh, black eyed peas, right? So these It's just that. It's just salt and chili. That is the flavor which is there for Olan. Something as simple as Olan to something like a aadu chuttadu, which is a very complicated process for which you need at least three people to help you to complete the process of cooking it. So there are extremes in every cuisine, and like every other cuisine of India, migration has influenced, trading has influenced our cuisine, settlement has influenced our cuisine, and it is all about, and I think that's one lesson we could take from any cuisine in India, is that it's all about accepting and not thinking that it is yours and it is mine. It is all about what is ours. It is high time that we credit it as what is ours and we move forward in that sense. When the moment we start accepting everything as something beautiful and something unique, I think it will be a much better place to live in. So if you have any questions, I think that's my bit I wanted to share about Kerala cuisine, its influence, how Ayurveda is linked to it, the use of coconut, and how different flavor profile it is. I mean, the kind of curiosity that people have about different cuisines and what Delhi Food Walks is doing right here to convey the whole message that everything is beautiful. Every cuisine has its own um, message to convey. That's what make these videos or engagements beautiful, right? So if there's no question in general, I think I should wind up. And thank you so much, Anubhav, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the cuisine of my land, to convey any unique veg food from Kerala. Like I said, Olan is a very unique vegetarian dish. Avial in itself is very unique because Avial has a lot of vegetables and people still love it. Kids love it. Right? There's any kind of vegetable can be put into an avial. Avial never had potatoes in it, but then now there are so many. You add potatoes to it as well. There's carrot, there's raw plantain, and then it's just all cooked with. And for the souring agent, either raw mango or curd yogurt is used. And then for top it off, we add coconut. Right? Like Olen is a very important dish in our sadhya, which is made with coconut milk and ash gourd. There is also this dish called astram, which literally translates to weapon. Astram is eaten. It's very. There's a place in Kerala called Onatagara, which has a mythology of a goddess. They're famous for its temple, and they eat astram as a very healthy food. Astram is also something very similar to kalan, which we use in sadhya. And astram is called a weapon because apparently it builds your immunity and fights against diseases. And it's made with any tuber like yam or colocasia or anything, and then again cooked with a coconut mixture, but then cooked in a pressure cooker so that it's easy to cook it. So it's called astram because it's a weapon against. I think that's a very unique way to call it. And we usually have it with kanni. Kanni is astram is usually served with kanni, which is the porridge, right? Which has so many variants across India as well. So thank you so much, Anubhav. I hope this was a wonderful opportunity for me to reach out to the people outside of Kerala and even within Kerala. Thank you so much. Means a lot. Thank you so much for joining the live. And let's spread positivity through food.